It's almost lunchtime. I was so hungry, I almost ate this lemon. You know, I was actually thinking about this lemon. It's interesting because I think about these lemons and I think about April 2020. The world was being shut down, and we actually had to stop as a business and ask ourselves the question: what do we do amidst the pandemic? Volumes were drying up as lenders. We aren't leaving our house, and we caught up with this pandemic. So what do we do? And one of the things we did internally was we stopped and said, hey, the world's been giving us lemons. Let's make some lemonade. So that's an interesting analogy, for this conversation. So we do have lunch coming up in a few minutes' time, but I wanted to talk to you about a path to inclusive growth. You've heard a lot about this today. And I guess my job is to not give you hope, but to maybe inspire you with some thoughts about what the future could look like. It isn't a long presentation, but it's one that may provoke you about a couple of things. And we'll try and keep this as specific as possible to Namibia. As Thabo has said, I've been in the business for 7 years, and I joined the business because of this topic. I joined this business because credit bureaus historically live at the center of an economy, in this case, center for digital economy. And the world we live in today is one where we're now going to figure out what we do with this youth population. Now, I'm not sure whether you guys knew this, but Africa is going to grow its population by some 2 billion people between now and the year 2100. If you didn't know this, the average African across 54 countries is 18.8 years old. The average Namibian is 21 years of age. So it's a very young population. So let's compare that to a couple of places, right? So the US, the average age of the population is 38 years, and the average German, we compare Namibia to Germany, 47, right? So as we think about where we are today in Namibia, we have a young population. It's a small population, but we're a young population. And why is this important? It's because when you think about Africa by 2100, we're going to have a established world, the first world, that's starting to age off. Today, Germany, 47 years age. Where will they be by the year 2100? Where will the world's labor force come from? So if you didn't know this, by the year 2030, Africa will have the largest workforce in the world. Not China, not India, Africa, right? We have the most arable land. We have the highest replacement ratio. We are growing our population faster than any other place in the world. So some would argue that success is almost guaranteed, but we all get to choose how long it'll take. Does that make sense? So it's quite provocative as to where we are. We've done quite well in Namibia, in my kind of studies. We already have a greater diversity in terms of female. Women empowerment is big in Africa. It looks like we're making great strides already in terms of our diversity generally within the Africa population. So the key thing to take away about where we are today is whether you are in financial literacy like Junion is, whether you're a microlender or whether you're the regulator, we're trying to figure out this one solution. How do we get the population to start to realize their potential? How do you get them to make choices today that sets them up for the next generation? So 25 years from now, we should really be coming into our own. Not by 2030, but the choices we make today is what's going to be important. Now, right now, if I understand the population of Namibia, we've got around, according to Laura's data, about 1.666 million adults that should be in the system of finances. But we only have around 670,000. So arguably, there's 1 million adults at the age of 18 that want to be more than we think they should be. They believe in their potential. They believe that they can be #more, right, than we believe. But there's something about how we operate today that's holding them back. It's not them. These youngsters have the potential. They have the desire. We have the ability to say no consistently. But what if we said yes? What would happen? So that's the conversation for today. How do we start to think differently? Another big change in the world right now is the life expectancy is changing. So back in the 90s, the average age or the age you'd live to was in the 50s. We're now in the 60s. The next generation, my kids, may live to 120, right? Some of us are thinking about, man, do I have enough money just to 65? Because it's too much curry, I may die by 65. That's a good number. What if we live to 70 or 80 or 100? Are we organized with that mindset? If Africa is the youngest population, and we do live to 120, right? That's 100 years from today's average age. What's going to happen with that? So it's important to recognize that the population is getting older. Not only must we care about inclusion from those that are poor and don't look like us, we have to care about diversity. In Africa, across the continent, there are 500 million people that are excluded. Women are excluded in majority across the continent, not because of the financial system, it's actually a cultural bias. We don't want women to leave the house. We want them to be subservient to men. That is changing. Africa is probably the most progressive in terms of women empowerment, but we're not doing enough. I was in another country just a couple of weeks ago, and the government summoned myself and Thabo and said, guys, listen, we need to be working with the telcos to drive women empowerment. We're going to give you access to the data. We want you to be biased towards women. We need more women to participate in the economy. We want to show in the 54 countries that we can lead the way. This is the diversity you're talking about, inclusion. Whether you're young, whether you're old, whether you're poor, whether you're rich, whether you're like a black suit versus a blue suit, it doesn't matter. We are African because Africa is in us. Not because we're in the continent. My people come from India, 1860 to 1911. But I'm African because I'm born in Africa. Africa's in me. How do we realize our potential? You know, I spoke about these million-odd consumers that are invisible right now. And the question is, how do you see them for who they are? So I'm from Johannesburg in South Africa. Our bureau started in the year 1901, right? And a lot has changed since then. We have challenges in Namibia, bigger challenges where I'm from. And as you know, Namibia's economy is highly correlated to whatever happens in South Africa. But one of the biggest issues is invisibility. In my country, we have 14 million people that are invisible to the system. So if you're standing here and you have potential in you, you could afford to take that loan or that car. But the way we look at you is what we call a point-in-time decision. So one of the big things you're going to hear a lot more from my team and just in general is this concept of alternative data, right? Alternative data is a way to take non-financial, non-traditional data to help figure out who Lee is. Not just say that Lee is a good guy for finance, but say that Lee is a bad guy, or historically a bad guy, but I can see the potential is becoming good. And what if you, as a lender, as a regulator, could say to Lee, today, I don't see that you're bad today, but I see that in 3.2 months that you'll be good. I'm going to provision the risk for you, but I see your potential because today you have the opportunity to start this small business. Today, not tomorrow, not 3.2 months. How do we start to do this? So this notion called alternative data is actually widespread. We've been doing it in my country for about 5 years, and now we're looking to bring that into places like Namibia, Rwanda, Kenya. We have a lot going on. The good thing for Namibia is that you don't need to start from scratch. Like we're in 8 countries in Africa, and we're 34 countries around the world. Alternative data to improve this issue on invisibility is actually well underway. I guess the challenge for us is, as lenders, as regulators, as telcos, as insurers, is how do we start to see better, right? The movie Avatar, do you see me, right? I could be right there with all the potential in the world. In fact, this topic was a subject of a court case in South Africa back in 2021. A person that sold flowers on the street in Cape Town wanted to buy a car. And the person had no pay slips, which is a requirement to apply for finance. And says, listen, I've got all the money. My business is doing really well. I couldn't buy a car. Went to the court system, and the court says that should not be allowed. So we don't victimize you on not being able to have a pay slip. Because the world isn't just about people in suits that come into physical buildings. You see me for more than what my facade says I am. You see into my soul. You see my potential. Invisibility is not because people don't have potential. The system is just used to saying no. And I guess the challenge for you, because I don't have answers, the challenge is, are you starting to think different at a policy level? Are you starting to just go after what you used to? Because if you keep doing that, there's only 670,000 Namibians to go after. If you open your eyes beyond the physical way of working, there's not a million adults waiting in the wings to say, choose me. We just can't see them. And your ability to see potential is a hallmark characteristic of inclusion over the next 80 years as a continent. So we're going to find a way to empower consumers. What Junion is talking about, what the regulator is talking about is key. Financial literacy is absolutely key. It isn't because Africans want to have too many kids. It's because we have a history that got us to where we are, right? We've been colonized in 53 of our 54 countries. We are playing catch up. We're now starting to show that we can empower. Empowering a consumer isn't just about giving them a chance to get access to finance. It's teaching them to live a different life, showing them not just the North Star, the vision of where they could go to, but showing them a pathway of what to do. I gave an example earlier to one of the colleagues, and I said, in South Africa, we have a high number of unemployment. We launched a solution called Credit View. And what it does for the first time is ever, and this is now 3 years ago, just before the pandemic, it demystifies a credit score. For many people, including my parents, they've been told no by the banking system. So when you're told no, your heart is broken. So whether it's to buy the wedding ring, the engagement ring, to pay lobola, to get married, or whatever, to bury your child, you can't access money. What you find is that we get said no to, but no one ever tells you why it's a no. If you told me, Lee, there's 2 things that prevent us from getting into a yes, I then choose to work on those 2 things. And the second I've worked on it, I go from being a no to a yes. So we launched a solution that goes from financial literacy to empowering self-remediation. It's embarrassing to talk about me not having access to credit or to finance. But at 2 in the morning, when I'm stressing about my situation, we start to think about how we empower the consumer in their point of need, in their time of need, to take control back. And many people now start to say, okay, how do I start to look after myself? Literacy is the start. Giving them a pathway to the vision. You may have that picture up on your wall. I want to have a Porsche, I want to have a house. The wedding ring I saw at the jewelry store. It was all my vision. But what's the pathway to get there? We've got to start thinking about the potential in people. And we have the responsibility, not the consumer. You know, my mom always says to me, growing up, she says, I'm praying for you guys every day, but you've got to meet God halfway. You've got to study for your exams, right? Prayer itself is not good enough, you know. We all need prayer, but we've got to work hard. Here's the difference, though. The consumer wants to meet you halfway. You close your door. How do you start to open that door? Now, talking about doors, I'm not sure whether you realize this, but 70% of all employment in Africa comes from SMMEs, not from big businesses like TransUnion, not from your banks, not from your telcos, small businesses. Small businesses hire between 3 and 7 people on average. Right? These are your small micro businesses in the rural area, in the township, in your spaza shop, in your saccos. 3 to 7 people. In my country, 70% of all employment comes from SMMEs. Right? So you want a person that looks like me to get your money as a lender. I don't need your money, or I need your money, but my ability to replicate or create leverage is limited. These small businesses, agile, responsive, they're buying their stock for today to pay back tomorrow. They need your help. Right now, there's about 40,000 SMMEs actively contributing to the Namibian economy. In my country, 3.5 million. 1.5 million closed in the pandemic. 1.5 million in South Africa around the corner. And the question is, why is that? Because we don't see small, medium, and micro businesses the way you see a big business. The guys with the suits, when you give them the money, these guys don't create economic opportunity. It's these small, agile opportunities to give somebody a chance. You look like a good person, let me give you a chance. Work, I'm going to pay you. You don't work, I'm going to fire you. People need those chances. Those people don't have suits. They're barely trying to get out of their homes. They're looking for a small job just to get through, and they're going to build it up. That vision of what the potential is starts with the consumer. But on the other side, I mentioned the analogy of prayer. We need to meet them halfway, all of us. All of us, the regulatory environment, the banks, the lenders, insurers. What are we going to do to change this? If we know that small, medium, micro contributes, what do we do? So we're doing a lot of innovation in this space as well. In fact, right now, we are working with the World Bank and the IFC to do a pilot in Africa to figure out how we empower more small, medium, and micro businesses. The person that owns this spaza shop, right, doesn't feel like someone you'd extend credit to. For what? But you don't know this small business. You are judging them based on a photograph. You've made a judgment call. In the book Blink by Malcolm Gladwell, if you haven't read it, you should read it. We make a call. When I walked up on stage today, you decided already in the first minute, I don't like this guy. Or I like this guy. But after the first 5 minutes of me talking, you've decided already for life whether you like me or not. It's okay. I see you at the back. It's okay you don't like me. It's fine. It's fine. But it's how we are. We are organized to be judgmental. It's a human characteristic. But what if I, for a second, paused this reality and said, convince me that you could be more? What if I saw more? So we are looking to figure out ways to profile businesses. We've been quite successful. I'll give you an example. In one of our large banks that we work with in South Africa, these small guys, we ask them for even more paper. They can't afford to print. Bring more paper to convince me. You know how it is, right? But we are bureaus. We've got data, right? We're able to take a process that took 2 weeks of manual process, and within minutes, we're able to say, yes, I still need the paper, but very quickly, in real time, what are you doing, right? We're able to do things like pre-filling in forms. We've got data everywhere. Aggregate the data and reduce the average handling time. When a small business phones you in, average handling time of a contact center call, 23 minutes. Why can't you reduce it down to 3 minutes or 2 minutes? This person has to decide to spend time listening to your hold tune or to make a call and go borrow money from our neighbor, right? What is starting to happen, and I'm not sure what the word in Namibia is, we call the word mashonisa, right? Mashonisa is the most adverse form of a loan shark, where you borrow money from your neighbor or the guy around the corner. No paperwork required, but you could pay with your life if you're not actually able to do this. So if we are the formal market, we are the enablers of the economy, what can we do to actually enable the potential in businesses? Now, why is this important when I talk about inclusive growth? Lee can be all he wants to be, but there aren't people that want to hire Lee to give Lee a chance, right? And actually, we're not reaching out. We're not pulling people up. The potential in Africa is there. There is zero doubt. You look at every IMF, World Bank report. It talks about Africa's potential. That's why FDI is increasing. Theo spoke about it this morning. Everybody wants a hand in Africa because they know what's going to happen. But how do we hold back control? What do we do about this? So that's the conversation you got to think about. And some final thoughts for you all. This child's actually not a real child. It's actually an AI-generated child. Right? True story. Right? That's the power of technology. Right? It's interesting. This picture of the child is a typical African child. Right? There's 1.4 billion of us on the continent. There's going to be 4 billion of us by the top of the century. We are meant to be successful. This child, this image, should be the one that indicates the potential in our eyes, what is possible. It's a hopeful picture. It's not meant to be sad, but we get to decide what happens to her. Is she on the streets looking for money? Is she working? Is she a scientist solving for Africa's problems? That's the choices we're going to make. So thank you all for your chance to listen to you. If you want to read about what I write about this stuff all the time, I'm on LinkedIn, or you can email me directly if you want to. This is stuff we should talk about. And actually, I was talking to my team, and I said to them earlier today, the answers aren't clear. But if we talk about it, we're going to stumble upon the answer. And if we don't stumble upon the answer, why don't we try a few things out together? That's the potential. The World Bank has said to us, with all the countries in the world, let's try and solve this problem here. If we can help Brazil, help India, help Asia generally. We've got the potential. So thank you for your time. I'm going to hand back over to Lara to wrap up. But thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate you all.